traveling through this world below.
Alright, how's it going, people? Welcome again to another lecture. This time the music's cut short because I'm trying to get this done before 5th period. So we are now in the Antebellum Period. This is Unit 3. And this is the period right after the Revolutionary War and the founding of the nation to right before conflict that led to the Civil War. Civil War is when North versus South United States fought together. So the Antebellum Period can sometimes be overlooked because it doesn't seem super significant, but a lot that happens during this period leads to the Civil War, which is a pretty big deal in U.S. history. All right, so we'll start with Thomas Jefferson. He is the 3rd president. His election is called the Revolution of 1800 because it was the first peaceful transition of power. So the presidents before him, George Washington and John Adams, were Federalists. Thomas Jefferson was elected president, and power was given to him peacefully, which has been the norm in the United States ever since. Thank goodness, am I right? Don't need a revolution every year. Okay, so some of his biggest things is the Louisiana Purchase. So Jefferson purchases the Louisiana from France because they needed money bad in 1803, and this nearly doubled the size of the United States. So he's responsible, one, for creating more territory, which becomes an issue and a conflict later on, and also questioning the size of the government. He believed in small government, but he also used the government to purchase land, which is interesting. Great. This is also where we see the rise in the Supreme Court. So just a recap on what it is. A Supreme Court justice is nominated by the president and then confirmed by the U.S. Senate. The number of justices has wavered over time, but at the beginning there were only 5. And the Chief Justice in the second round was Justice John Marshall, and he created the Supreme Court as it is today, where that the Supreme Court has the authority to review and rule on the constitutionality of laws, or anything passed by Congress and the President. All right, fast forward a little more. We have President Monroe. He becomes president, and he passes something called the Monroe Doctrine. So the doctrine claims that the United States can intervene in foreign countries if they are worried about their well-being and security. The U.S. targets this more towards Latin American countries than any other countries, and at the time it was meant to prevent further colonialism in Latin America. A lot of these governments were starting to get their own liberty and sovereignty, and the U.S. was worried that England would start coming over and colonizing them because that's a little scary. England's right next door. This comes up a lot later, when we get into communism, because it's used again as a way to sort of justify intervening in different countries, and the U.S. still uses this to this day. Okay, great. We also have at this time the market revolution starting in the late 1790s, going to the 1900s. So the big thing is this is a change from regional markets to national markets. So that means instead of just selling things in Massachusetts, I'm making things and selling them all over the country and internationally. So all states are trading with each other more frequently. Up north, so like New England area, there was a large textile economy or clothing economy, and agriculture was big in the east and the south. The west and the south. Another big part of the market revolution were the invention of different inventions, to make it easier for people to get jobs. So the first is the cotton gin, which easily separated cotton from the seed, and this contributed to industrialization and further growth of agriculture in the south. You also had large-scale manufacturing up north, which meant less reliance on foreign imports and more need for wage labor. So wage labor is essentially less skilled labor. If you think about it, if you're not in a factory and you don't have a factory to make shoes, you have to be pretty skilled to make some dang good shoes, right? But if you have a factory where each person's doing something differently to make shoes, you don't have to be skilled. You just have to know how to do that one thing. So this led to the increase and more people working. So there was rapid development and a lot of movement across land, especially further west. Keep in mind Louisiana Purchase. And then there was also an opportunity for more women and minority workers to actually work in factories. Great. To add on, a lot of politicians supported the migrant revolution through legislation. One of these is called the American system. So the idea is that the government will provide money for infrastructure like canals and roads. The government will put tariffs on imports or tax imports so that people buy U.S. goods instead of foreign goods. And then the government will create a national bank. Okay. Women are pretty interesting during this time period. So I'm going to start with Republican motherhood. This is right around the Revolution and right after it. So during and after the American Revolution, women remained in the private sphere of their home, but their role was more valued in the public sphere for government and other things. Their access to education was expanded so they could teach their children. So essentially they became important in teaching their children. Great. Some say it contributed to women's rights movements and abolitionism due to higher education. Women were responsible for passing Republican values on to the next generation. And the idea is they need to sacrifice their own needs, such as their right to vote, for the greater needs of the country. After the American Revolution, after Republican motherhood, there is the cult of domesticity. And this is the happiness of the family unit and wholeness of the home is what women are responsible for. Obviously, right? Who else could be responsible for that? Just kidding, just kidding. Cult of domesticity, I don't like it. There's this weird website that says it's a good thing. I don't know. Anyway, it emphasized the values of woman being in the home and redefined femininity. Piety, which is being religious, purity, domesticity, and submissiveness were the founding pillars. Mostly applied to white and Protestant women. And it decided and reinforced the idea that the home was the proper sphere for women. So they should be in their homes in privacy. They should not be public figures. A little bit of a change from Republican motherhood. Okay, great. I made this in time before my class. Thank goodness. I'll see y'all later.
There is no sickness, toil, nor danger in that